10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 55. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 55 of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. My name is Nick Manella, and if you're new to the show, I am your host and the creator of this podcast. And every week we are seeking to bring you a short and concise jazz lesson, complete with downloadable PDF, which you can find at our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com. That's the number 10, minutejazzlesson.com. So today we're bringing you our lick of the month for May. We do one of these every single month, and it's a good chance to get a little bit of vocabulary right at the end of the month here and learn something new from one of the legendary jazz musicians in history. So today we're going to be looking at a Joe Henderson lick, and this is from his solo on a blues called Home Stretch. And actually, this is the solo that I have transcribed for the Inner Circle members this month. And I thought this lick was so great that I would bring it to you on the show as your lick of the month. So if you would like to get the whole solo, you can simply sign up for the Inner Circle, which for a limited time until June 1st is only $5 a month. And if you sign up for that $5 a month, you have it for $5 forever. But on June 1st, it's going to go up to $10. So make sure that you get in on it today. This will be the last episode that I put out where it'll actually be $5 for that introductory pricing. But you are locked in. If you sign up, $5 forever. And it's a really great way to support the podcast. We definitely need your support and love your support to keep the show going. And that's what you get every month. You get a full transcription from a different artist. We've already done trumpet, guitar. Now we're going to do tenor saxophone. And you'll get access to every single back month as well. So you'll also get access to the months where you weren't a member. And every other month that comes out, we're going to be doing a different instrument. So you get the transcription. You also get the useful vocabulary like I do on these episodes where I'm pulling out a piece of useful vocabulary for you. You get all that on a separate sheet, which is kind of cool because then you have a ready-made vocabulary list at your fingertips. I also kind of analyze the tune that we're talking about. So this week I will analyze this blues. It's a little bit different from your typical blues, but you do get a ton of stuff. So make sure you go and show your support. We definitely need it. I know if you tune in every month, if you could spare the $5 a month, that would be so cool, and we would really appreciate that. All right, so let's jump into the lick for today. So one of the things about this blues is that it doesn't have your typical 2-5-1 turnaround that you would find in bar 9 of the blues. Instead, it's a more traditional turnaround, which goes 5 to 4 to 1. So you have one measure of the 5 chord, one measure of the 4 chord, then we're back to the 1 chord. Now, the place that this lick of the month starts is also a little bit funny. It actually starts in bar 7 of the blues and then leads us into bar 9. So what you're going to be looking at on your sheet is a C7 chord for 2 bars. And what that is that's bar 7 of the blues. And then immediately when we get to the G7 chord, that's bar 9, which starts our turnaround. But again, I just want to mention that it is your traditional turnaround, which is 5-4-1, which is a little bit more of an old school turnaround. The bebop guys really brought the 2-5-1 into the blues. So Joe Henderson in this tune is kind of paying homage to a little bit of an older blues, and it probably fit the melody that he had in his head a little bit better, so he chose to do the 5-4-1 turnaround. Okay, so this is an interesting line because what Joe Henderson is showing us, and this is something that Joe likes to do a lot, is he's basically superimposing a certain scale over these entire 4 bars, except for the very, very, very end where it resolves to the 1 chord. And the device that he's employing here, the thing that he wants the sound of, regardless of the chord that's happening, is a C diminished scale. So if you look at the first, if you look at the first 8 notes of the line, we see these notes: B, C, D, E flat, F, F sharp, G sharp, A, then we're back at B, okay? So what that is you're looking at, a half whole starting on B, but the way that I prefer to look at it is actually a whole half scale starting on C. So he's using the B as a pickup to the first C that we see, and then he's playing the whole half scale, which, as you should know from past lessons, is actually the diminished scale. So he's using the diminished scale, and he's just superimposing that diminished scale over basically the first 3 full measures of this line. So if you look at the first measure of the lick, the second measure of the lick, the third measure of the lick, and then the first half of the fourth measure of the lick, it's all using this exact same scale. Now, Joe Henderson liked to do this. He liked to take a device like maybe I've seen him do a pentatonic scale, or a certain set of arpeggios, or a certain scale, like the diminished scale. And what he'll do is he'll play that for an extended period of time in his solo, not worrying about which changes he's playing it over. So basically what you're doing is you're getting the overall effect of the scale. The listener is really hearing the scale rather than the changes. And this gives a very, very different effect to the listener rather than somebody who's just following the changes very, very strictly. All right, it's a little bit more of a modern way to play, and Joe Henderson was one of the pioneers of this kind of sound, and it's what made Joe very unique sounding compared to his peers. And I think one of the reasons that so many of us, jazz fans are attracted to his playing, because it doesn't really sound like anybody else. It's Joe Henderson kind of right off the bat, and not just because of his sound. He had a very unique tenor sound as well, but definitely in his harmonic and melodic approach to soloing, you hear stuff like this all the time. So this is a good example on why you should learn your diminished scales and your diminished dominant scales. And one of the coolest things about this is that if you learn your diminished dominant scales, you already know your diminished scales. You just have to start them on the next note up so that it's whole half instead of half whole. And it just goes to show you that sometimes, our heads can start swimming because of all the information that we have to learn. But luckily for us, a lot of this information is interconnected and intertwined. All right, enough of me blabbing. I'm sure you want to actually hear the line. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to play the line unaccompanied so you can just hear the raw material that's going on. And then I'm going to play it with a backing track. So here's the about 5-note lick. It starts on the and of 3, so keep that in mind. And check out the diminished sound that you hear when I play this. So the first thing you want to notice is just that real diminished sound, that whole half kind of sound. And you could hear that just spans up 2 octaves, basically. So what would typically happen is that, he might be playing the scale over, C7, but then when most musicians get to the G7, they're going to actually change what they're doing to fit that G7 chord. But Joe Henderson gives us a completely different effect by not even bothering to acknowledge that G7 chord and just continuing what he was doing over the C7 chord, and even to some extent over the F7 chord. But then in the very end of the lick, so the last 4 notes of the F7 chord into the C7 chord, he does actually move into a resolution. And that's what makes it so effective, is you just keep on hearing this diminished scale, you keep on hearing it, you keep on hearing it, and then right at the very last second, he plays something that leads right into C7, and that really brings everything home. So now I want you to hear it actually over the chord changes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the blues progression right at the very beginning, and I'm not going to play anything until I get to bar 7 to show you where this lick actually fits into the blues. So here it is with some accompaniment. So hopefully that gives you an idea of actually where he plays it and what it sounds like over those chords. And it really kind of works, doesn't it? So it's just another way to approach things. You know, we all want to work on our bebop playing and nailing every single chord change, but it's also nice to know that there are other ways to approach things. So if you like that lick, there's tons more of them in that solo. There's a lot of really, really cool stuff that's happening. Make sure you go and get your Inner Circle membership for only $5. It will only be that way until June 1st. So get on it, and then it will be going up to $10 a month, and we could really, really use your support. So if you appreciate the podcast, please go and sign up. It'll definitely keep us going. All right, we'll see you next week with a brand new episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to go and get the PDF at the website. All right, talk to you guys soon. Bye.